Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. It's time for another team season preview, and this time our team is the Tennessee Titans. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davies. As you can see, with me today, returning from last season, as well as the season just gone, with us today is Greg Kett, Titans fan. Greg, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, all good. Can't really complain. Just a couple of days removed from my return from the Olympic Games, so still in that sort of mode at the moment. But yeah, it's also good to be back as well. Can't be there forever. So yeah, back here to talk all things NFL. But the season now, I think the time of recording, exactly a month away. August the 5th is the time of recording right now. This will be released next day, so August 6th. And yeah, so it's all systems go for the NFL season. How excited are you for it, Greg?
A lot more exciting than I thought it was going to be, if I'm honest with you. It's been a bit of a period of transition for the Titans, as we know, with the new head coach, the new regime almost. So it's been a strange time because we've had very Vrabel for a fair few years, and you kind of knew what you were going to be getting with the Titans. And this year we have no idea what we're going to be getting in a weird sense. So exciting times. And it's something that's always exciting when you get a month away from football, even if you're not expected to do well. You still just want to watch some football and get back into the swing of not sleeping, certainly if you're from the UK. So yeah, no, I'm excited for it and can't wait to talk about the business that we've done and hopefully get people maybe a little bit excited about the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, well, let's get into it now. Look at the ins. You re-signed the likes of Nick Westbrook-Akine. Then you also brought in the likes of Jamal Adams, Tyler Boyd, Nick Folk, the Jarius Sneed via a trade from the Chiefs, Calvin Ridley, Mason Rudolph, Sebastian Joseph Day, Tony Pollard, Kenneth Murray, and then drafting wise took JT Latham first round, Javonte Sweat second round. In the fourth round, he took Cedric Gray, and another one was Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in the fifth round, to name just a few. And then the main outs include the big one, Derrick Henry, Aaron Brewer, Nico Autry, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Ryan Tannehill. Yeah, in terms of the ins and outs player-wise, Greg, your take on the off-season as a whole?
I think Derrick Henry leaving was always going to sting when it happened. I think he's been what this franchise has been building. It's what its whole identity behind has been Derrick Henry, and in those years of success that we had, where we made the AFC Championship. When number one in the AFC, and all of that was really riding off the back of Derrick Henry. So that stung a bit. But I think with this new regime that I was referring to earlier, with Bryce Callahan coming in, I'm expecting to see a very, very different Tennessee Titans. The Titans have always been relatively run heavy, even if you go back in the history books, the running backs that we've had over the years, going back to Earl Campbell, Eddie George, Chris Johnson, and obviously Henry himself. That the four of them are four of the best the league have ever seen. But I think we're going to see a different offense. We're going to see a much more pass-heavy offense, and the business we've done, bringing the likes of Ridley in, bringing the likes of Tyler Boyd in to build them around what we already had with Hopkins. Hopefully, get something out of Treylon Burks. I think there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of there is a lot of no one really knows exactly what to expect. But I think what we will expect is a much, much less predictable offense. I mean, you just got to look at the points per game. We think 28th last year, yards per game, similar story. We've been way too predictable and not particularly exciting for some time. But with a quarterback who has shown glimpses of quality, and I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but also second, we had an offense last year. The offensive line was a complete mess. It was how he was able to get any success out of that team last season with the players he had around him was nothing short of a miracle. So I've got high hopes with Levis that we've put all the weapons around him now. We've put the offense around him to make him succeed, and if he doesn't succeed, it's not going to be because he doesn't have that around him, which is a nice place to be, and it's exciting. It's the first time in a number of years that I speak to friends of mine who are Titans fans who are genuinely excited. It's the first time probably that's happened since probably Mariota was first drafted. But we'll see how we go, and I'm not expecting us to go and blow the doors off and win the division or anything crazy like that. But I think we'll take another step in the right direction, which is, for me, perfectly fine.
We mentioned a bit ago, you mentioned about a new look sort of offense, and it comes partly with one of the other sort of main outgoings ingoings with at the head coach position. Mike Vrabel was fired in January, which came to shock for a lot of people. Maybe not quite yourself. I remember when you talked privately on DM about when the news broke that he'd gone. That you said you understood the decision, but obviously coming in instead of him is the former Bengals offensive coordinator, Bryce Callahan. So what's your take on that, Greg? Because I don't know whether your stance has changed on the Mike Vrabel sacking maybe a few minutes later, whether it's stayed the same or whether it's changed. But yeah, what was your take on the, just for the benefit of the audience, what was your take on the Vrabel firing? But also, what is your take on the Bryce Callahan addition?
Yeah, the Vrabel sacking, I mean, he's had success with us. The teams I mentioned earlier, making an AFC Championship final, making being the number one seed a couple of years ago as well. He has had success, but this league has changed massively in the last, probably even since he joined us in 2018. He's old school. He's a defensive coach, and I think he wanted the control of being able to hire the coordinators he wanted, and we talked a lot about, if you look at the coordinators that we've had over the years, it's always been probably the guys realistically that aren't going to be, someone like Todd Downing we had as an offensive coordinator. He's not the sort of person who's going to say boo to a goose in regards to bringing his own offensive style. And this league has changed massively when it comes to the style of an offense. And I think with the Titans, we wanted to become more current. So for that reason, whilst I had a huge respect for Vrabel and was somebody who, sounded probably crazy to some people to let him go when he'd done a pretty good job for us. Ultimately, the last 2 years, if you looked at his record with us in those last 2 seasons, or season and a half in particular, it was really bad. Like it was down there with some of the worst teams in the league. So I think it needed something new. But the new GM, Ran Carthon, came in. I think he had his own philosophy, and I think the time was right. And with Bryce Callahan, from what we've seen so far, which is obviously only really training camp, and I do think we're going to get that new, much more current NFL team. The sort of teams that you see that have success in this league now are more pass heavy. We're not going to be relying on riding Derrick Henry's coattails as we have done for years and years. And that for me is really, really exciting. But I'm actually really excited what we're doing on defense with the moves that we've made. L'Jarius Sneed, I think, is a fantastic pickup for us. That's been a position at corner that we've struggled with. Christian Fulton was a second-round draft pick for us, didn't work out. We got absolutely annihilated in the pass game from a decent defense perspective last year. So Sneed will come in, I think, and for what we've given up for him as well, I'm really quite pleased with what that deal looks like. Even more recently, Jamal Adams isn't going to be a massive piece of this defense. He's going to be somebody that comes in and his experience will be invaluable. How much he sees of the field, I don't know. That will depend on injuries as much as anything else. But Quandre Diggs being signed literally less than 24 hours ago, he is a player that is reliable when it comes to health, and that's been a problem with the Titans for some time. We've always seemed to pick up injuries. And he's somebody that has, again, a lot of experience. He was a Pro Bowler 3 years in a row. Whilst he's, in his production might not have been as great in the last year or so, but I think that's more to do with the contract that he had with Seattle more than actually. I still think he's got juice, and I still think he's a good player. And again, for the deal that we've made with him, I think it's a $3 million basic, potentially up to $5 million. I think that's a steal. I really do think that. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what. I'm not expecting us to come and just win the division. You'll see with my predictions. I think I've been quite realistic with where I think we are right now. But with those guys, they're on 1 year prove-it deals. If we can build the right pieces and get the right experience from them this year, who knows? They could end up staying, or we could end up being in a situation next year where we go and replace small bits and kick on.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's only $5 million and a very short-term deal, I think it's pretty much risk-free. I talked about this before on my other podcast, Finch Nation UK, my Dolphins podcast, and I will be mentioning it again when it comes to our Dolphins season preview. It's the fact that we've signed multiple players like Jordan Poyer, Calais Campbell. We had signed Jack Barrett as well for just very short-term deals. And I think with those kind of deals, I think at the end of the day, you think about Deshaun Watson's contract with the Browns and how bad that looks because of all the guaranteed money. But if you get a deal that cheap, $5 million, 1 or 2 years, if it don't work out, then you can get rid of them so quickly. And I think it's one of those ones where really there's no horrendous sort of cons about getting them. There's massive pros. They could end up having a one final song year. You see a lot of sportsmen have these final years later on in their career where they're really good, and then it goes downhill. So I think, pretty much risk-free, $5 million. I think that's pretty much, just get even just getting leaders in the dressing room, in the locker room. I think it's a really risk-free deal, and I think I love that addition, and I think that could be a real difference maker. Come, I think as you said, I don't think you're going to win the division, or maybe even challenge for Super Bowls, or definitely not challenge Super Bowls. But I think certainly you can turn your 6-win season into an 8-win season, into a 9-win season, and then that's progress there. And especially Callahan's first season, that'll be tremendous progress.
Yeah, the Titans have we've always been this team that we're never gonna just tank. We're always gonna try and win games. And if you look at this roster, there are very, very experienced players in there. At the wide receiver position, Ridley's late 20s. Boyd must be again late 20s, early 30s. Hopkins, we all know he's I say past his best. I mean, he was still showing some incredible ball catching skill last year, and he was by far and away the best receiver we had. But they're kind of building this roster not necessarily for 5 years' time. They're building this roster on, they want to be competitive. There's obviously players that we've drafted this year that are going to be going to take some time to build themselves into the league. But this is not a team that's just going to be happy with 6 wins, 8 wins. They're going to want to try and upset the division a little bit, whether it be nick a wild card spot or just make this as competitive as possible. And it's quite weird to think about the AFC South as actually being a relatively competitive division, because it's been a laughing stock for quite a few years now. But I think it is. I think all 4 teams, you could make a case for them winning the division. I mean, we all know the Texans had a great year in the end last year, but will they continue that on? Bit of an unknown entity. I think that they're looking a good place right now. Still think the Jags, also have got quite a few good pieces. They've obviously lost Ridley. I think it's a big miss for them. But Brian Thomas coming in. All 4 of those teams, you could argue, could nick that division. I think the Texans are currently the favourites. If you look at the bookies, I'm sure we're probably 4 favourites, but that's just classic Titans way, being a small market team. But I wouldn't be shocked if we were competing for it. I don't think we will win it, and you'll see that probably with my predictions come the end of it. But I think there'll be some games that we will upset some teams. Similar to Miami last year, no one expected us to win that game.
Oh, just bring that game up. I was hoping we could avoid that all episode.
Definitely had to bring it up. I mean, that was an unbelievable finish to that game. But no, honestly, it's one of those. They're the sorts of games that it's classic Titans. We go and lose to in a game that no one's expecting us to lose in. We'd lose it, and then we'd go and beat a team that we're expected to lose to comfortably. That is the Titans way. But I genuinely do think this year we've built this roster in a way, like I said earlier, that we want to be competitive, and that's all. We're not planning to try and win a Super Bowl. We're not planning necessarily to even try and win a division necessarily. It's all about seeing where we are after 10 weeks, and then if we're in with a shout of it, we give it a good go. That's all you really want to be when you are kind of semi-rebuilding. And those 1-year deals we were referring to for the likes of Diggs and Adams are low risk. And if it doesn't work out, you haven't got a massive cap hit to get out of them. So it's good in that regard. But it's the last year that we've at the moment got Hopkins under contract. So he'll also be on another prove it deal almost for another year. So it's going to be an interesting battle, but it's been the most excited I've been during training camp for a couple of years. I think it's a refreshing atmosphere in that that locker room right now, and I think there's a huge opportunity for some players who maybe haven't proven themselves to come out and maybe break out this year.
That's a fantastic segue into my next question. Was all about Treylon Burks, a guy that was brought in really to replace AJ Brown. From the sort of draft comparison they made to AJ Brown with Treylon Burks. Obviously, the trader went down with the Eagles. Hasn't really lived up to expectation. I'm just going to quickly find his stats because they're not great. He's not at all being the guy you thought getting. So total in 2 seasons, he has had 49 receptions, 665 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So that's not great for 1 season, let alone 2. But of course, you mentioned the Hopkins injury. This is his chance now. Of course, without Henry, who of course is a big miss. He's a franchise legend. He will be, I'm sure, a Titans Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame, whatever. He'll be he's certainly one of the best I've ever seen in the Titans jersey. So I think without him, I can see with the addition of Tyler Boyd. I know you brought in Tony Pollard, but I think with Ridley as well, I think it's going to be, as you said before, a pass-heavy offense. I think that's where Burks could potentially have his chance. So do you see him this season maybe being his breakout year, or do you think he'll never, ever live up to his first-round pick potential?
I don't think anyone's looking at him as much as it's easy to do it. No one's looking at him as the AJ Brown replacement anymore. Like that's always going to be the comparison because obviously that's what we got for AJ. But that's the old GM, that's the old regime. That's we're kind of past that now. I think the way I see Treylon Burks is a similar way that I see Caleb Farley, who was a first round pick that we had back in 2020.
Yeah, and of course he's not had his 5th-year option exercise, is he? They declined his 5th-year option, so he's another one that has to try and prove it. Him probably more so than Burks.
Yeah, for both of those players, I think it's all about how can you get yourself a spot on this roster and how can you contribute towards it. Whether that be you end up predominantly being special teams or whether for someone like Treylon Burks, he's the top 3 receivers are pretty much set in stone. He's now fighting out to try and be that wide receiver 4 with the likes of Westbrook-Ikhine, who's shown himself to be, whilst he isn't flashy, he's reliable. You've also got new rookies that we've brought in, Jaquan Jackson. There's a lot of high hopes for him. Kyle Phillips, who we had drafted a couple of years ago. If he can stay healthy, there are a lot of players in that position, and it's hard to say. I wouldn't necessarily say we're stacked at the position, but we've certainly got players there that can make the roster. For Treylon Burks, it's about carving out an opportunity and a role within this team. And if he does live up to even half the expectations that we all had 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was we drafted him, I only see that being a good thing because ultimately we've got 3 guys that we know are experienced and trusted that are going to be the top 3. And if he can chip in with 500 yards and a couple of touchdowns, I'm happy with that. We're never going to see him being wide receiver 1. I think those days are gone. If he ends up being anything more than wide receiver 4, then I think we're in a good place. And if one of those guys goes down injured, he just needs to try and fill the gap that's there. And Caleb Farley's a similar situation where we've put a lot of money and a lot of changes into. I mean, I think the cornerback room now is probably one of the strongest parts of our team, which is ironic because last year it was dreadful. The likes of McCreary has always been good. But I think we brought in Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who I think will play a lot of nickel, who is one of those players who is just physical. And that's what they want the sort of back end of this defense to be. You look at the likes I mentioned, McCreary. I mean, he was excellent last year, but everyone else has been a struggle. Awuzie, who we picked up from the Bengals, I think could do a really good job there as well. So it's a cornerback room that actually is pretty strong. So Farley's going to find playing time probably a struggle. So go and carve out an opportunity with special teams. Go and show yourself to be reliable. And if he does that and ends up getting a roster spot and contributes towards that, again, you have to kind of forget that they were a first round pick, and you kind of have to move on and say, he's still contributing. And that for me, going into what is now his fourth or fifth season coming up, that's all you really want to see from guys like that, where it hasn't worked out.
Yeah, I think you bang on the head, and never thought about that way. That actually, at some point you do have to just completely, take off the first round pick off the head. And I think, if anything, that probably helps the player to have that pressure removed. I think ultimately will help them be a solid solid, as you said, maybe special teamers, or maybe for Berg, maybe someone like Westbrook-Akini, where he can come up now and again and have these moments. So, I think obviously, it's not been their best careers, but I think, it only takes 1 year to turn your career around and, become a at least solid NFL player. So, I think certainly they're two players to be keeping an eye out for going into the season. And I have to touch on it, Derrick Henry departing, just not so much what you're going to lose, because everyone knows what you're going to lose, but just your sort of memories of him. Of course, he's been such a great servant for you guys over the last few years. One of the best running backs in the league over the last 5 years or so. Obviously, I think, and unless I'm wrong, he left in quite a modest way. He didn't try and force a trade. He sort of had a nice little goodbye on his final home game. But what was your take on overall just the departure of what's been a great servant for your team?
Yeah, it was. I think there was an opportunity where the Titans could have traded him to the Ravens last year. I read something that there was a 4th round pick on the table, which was I think originally all planned to go ahead, and I think was stopped by our owner just because I think she saw Derrick Henry as more than that, and wanted Derrick Henry to kind of make a decision on his own terms of at the end of his contract, so he can decide what he wants to do. I don't think it was ever on the cards that he was going to return. But I just look back to that 2020 season, over 2,000 rushing yards. Looking back to the big plays that he makes and the 99-yard rush against Jacksonville, these sort of things don't come up every week, obviously. So he's going to be a massive miss. But I think the way this offense is moving now, Tajay Spears last year did have a really solid year, considering Derrick Henry got the majority of the carries as a back who can catch the ball out of the back as much as be strong with the run game. And the kid's not even got any ACLs to tear. So ultimately, he's one of those players I think we'll see a really, really big step up from this year. And then Tony Pollard, as you mentioned earlier, I think is they're both quite similar backs, but I think they'll split that load. There isn't going to be a 1 and a 2. It will be a 1A, 1B. And I'm excited for that because I think there's opportunities now to have a slightly different look to the offense with how this is going to be approached. And then you've got what looks like it's going to be Hassan Haskins, who we drafted a couple of years back. He missed pretty much the whole of the year last year. But he's a bit more of your kind of bruising back that I think, we probably will bring in as a third choice running back on those sort of, 1 yard, just go and get somebody to go and carry the rock and get it over. I think there's every chance that, what we see from our running backs isn't going to be run the ball twice and then pass it on third down, as we've seen for quite some time. It is going to be different. It's going to be just weird to see Derrick Henry in a Ravens jersey. That might make me feel physically sick, but we've got to move on, and it's exciting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be keeping close on the Ravens, and think if they get far in the playoffs, I'm sure you'll be a lot of Titans fans like yourself will be rooting for Henry. I think in a lot of ways, like probably a lot of Lions fans did with the Rams who started back in the 2021 season. So I'm sure you'll be, if you're not in the playoffs yourself, keeping a close eye on how he does and sort of rooting for him as almost like a not a second team, but sort of a team you will support.
No, we won't say team. We'll root for Derrick. If Derrick Henry is the leading rusher of this league, but the Baltimore Ravens go 0-17, I'll be delighted with that. They can't cheer the Ravens on. Come on.
No, that's a good point. So we are heading now to our final segment, which is going to be our win-loss tie section. So for those of you who aren't familiar by now, every family comes on, predicts their team's record by going through each game and answering with a win-loss tie record. Now, Greg, of course, last year the Titans went 6-11. Do you by chance remember when you came on last season what your prediction was back then?
I'm going to say 7-10, something like that. But I might have actually been more optimistic.
10-7.
Okay, yeah, way more optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some that have been more often that, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's one of our more outwards. What's the word? More bigger gaps between wins and losses we've had so far. And of course, you are a guy who likes to go to America to watch games. You've been to games last season, year before that. We're going to mention each game individually now, but have you got any plans to go this year to any Titans games?
Yeah, so we've got plans for 5 games this year. So
Oh,
I'm there
wow.
for the first 3 of the season, and then
First
I'm
three
there
home or first three home and
first
away?
3 home and away. So I'll be there for Caleb Williams' first ever NFL game, which will be fun.
Nice.
And I'm not thankful for that because the ticket prices were ridiculous.
Oh, God.
So yeah, first 3. So the Bears away, and then Jets and Packers at home, and then I'm back in November for the Patriots at home, and then away to the Chargers. So yeah, I'm quite
Wow.
fortunate to get at least hope. Well, I say at least if we make the playoffs, I'll be back out again. But maybe that's wishful thinking.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm keep thinking I'd love to go to see us win a division in Week 18 in New York against the Jets, but we'll probably finish second to the Bills or something like that. So I'm not gonna book it yet until maybe the week before, just to especially if I turn 30 as well. 2 days after that game ends, I kind of would like to do it, but I don't want to book it now because no my luck, I'll book it now and end up watching us go 8-9 or something like that, or 10-6 and get the wild card spot and then win
I
the
always,
title.
I always do like the first. Generally, as a rule of thumb, we'll always try and do at least the first 2 or 3 games of the season before the Titans beat you up to the extent when where you're just like, oh, do I even want to go and watch games anymore? Whereas you've got that early season optimism. So last year was New Orleans, which we had massive optimism going into and lost. But no, this year we'll see. We'll see. I think it's I think I've been a little bit more reasonable with my predictions this year. But let's see. I'm definitely not going to be 10-7.
Well, we mentioned it then. Week 1 is against the Bears at Soldier Field. Caleb Williams, his first game as an NFL pro. Can you beat him? Win, loss, or tie?
I would love nothing more than, because it's going to be, the media will be all over this game. They are, it's going to be all about Caleb Williams, and understandably so. I would love to say we will, but I've said we're actually going to lose that game. I think it'll be a close game though. I don't think we'll be beaten off the park. I think it'll be a 2017, bit of a nervy one. But yeah, I think I'm going to put us down to lose that.
I actually think you could win this game. Just mainly because I know Caleb Williams is in a more fortunate spot than other rookies or first overall picks. The fact he's going to a 7-9 team as a first overall pick, but I just think that rookies are rookies. And I think that if there's any game you're going to want to play him, I think the first game is
Yeah,
because
I agree with that. I definitely think I'd much rather be playing in week 1 than in week 14 or something like that. But I think we're also going to be a very, very different looking Titans team. So we're almost, even though we don't have a rookie QB, we're going to have a very, very different setup, and that could mean that we, the first game could be a bit of growing pains for us as well. So I think, I think it'll be close. It was one of those ones I was on the fence with. I think I do think they'll nick it.
Okay, and then week 2, your second of 3 games you go into to start the season, is the first home game of the year at Nissan Stadium. You're taking on the New York Jets. Win, loss, or tie?
So I'm assuming that Aaron Rodgers had 4 snaps this year. I've actually put us to win this game. I think the Jets are good. I think defense is good. I think it will bounce back from that week 1 loss with a home win in the home opener. Okay,
and then week 3, you go from Rodgers' current team to Rodgers' old team. You take on the Green Bay Packers.
So the Packers game, it's going to be a tough one. I actually think we might lose this game, and I don't think the Packers are going to have a great year. But it just feels like one of those games that will be quite tough for us. And I mean, we never win 2 games in a row generally, so I've put us down to lose this one. Again, I think it'll be a narrow defeat. I don't think we'll get blown out by any stretch.
Okay, and then we mentioned it earlier, the return of a game that probably haunts me the most out of any NFL game, because I, as a Dolphins fan, the base experience for the first 10 years of the fan, just losing seasons, before 2 years ago, a team has played one playoff game in my entire existence. So never really had any hope going into any seasons. But last year, I had a lot of hope, sort of going into that late on in the season. When you go all those points up against you guys last year and you lose the game with 3 minutes, we were 17 points up, 14 points up with 3 minutes to go, something crazy like that. And to lose that, and ultimately that played a big part in us not winning division, having to play players and then they get injured. And basically, I think that result ultimately had a huge impact in sort of ending our season. So, yeah, I'm not too fond of talking about this game. But for you, Greg, win, loss or tie?
I think we'll lose this. I don't think you're ever going to see a game like that, or certainly not immediately afterwards. It will be ingrained in your players' heads. If you go 14 points up on us again with any period of time left in the game, I don't think you'll be giving it up. So, and that's a really tough one for us. I think on the road, I think it's Monday Night Football as well. I think that will be a 7, potentially maybe even a two score game there. I think that will be a comfortable win for you this time.
Well, my fingers and toes are crossed on that one because I can't go through that again.
It was great. I loved it.
I bet you did, yeah. It's like I would imagine what it'd be like when we beat AC Milan. If you're an AC Milan fan back in 2005, I always think, I've never had that really apart from the Crystal Palace game. Never had actually that experience as a football fan. But yeah, having that as an NFL fan, I kind of just imagine what that was like for the likes of AC Milan fans when they lost that 2005 final.
It was really weird, that game. I won't go talk about it too much more, I promise. But it was one of those ones where there were Titans fans I know who are based in Nashville who would, I think, 14 points down, whenever it was, turned it off. Just weren't even watching. And obviously was it Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football? I can't remember, but it was obviously a late game,
wasn't it? It was prime time, Monday or Thursday. I can't remember.
Oh, for some reason I thought it was Sunday, but I might be wrong. But we were obviously, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and even I was sitting there being like, do I want to watch the end of this, or will I enjoy the extra 30 minutes sleep? Luckily I did stay up through the end of it because I can't help myself, but I don't think it'll be the same this time. I think it's going to be a completely different type of game. But you never know, we might nick it again, but I've put us down as a loss.
Okay, well, week 5 you got a bye week, so week 6 you're back at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah,
I've put us to win that one. I think we'll split the series with the Colts this year, and I think we'll win at home. So that puts us to 2-3.
It does, going into week 7. The game I hope you win is on the road to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I don't think we will. Although I'm not sure about the Bills this year. I think losing Diggs is going to be a loss for them. But no, I think on the road, getting to that time of the year where it's getting a bit colder, I don't fancy us winning that one.
No, that's fair enough. I would agree with that. Week 8, you're on the road again, this time against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I've put us to lose this one. I think it's going to be close, this game. I think the Lions have looked really, really good. But I think it will be a narrow defeat.
Okay, well then, you're back yourself, traveling the States at this point in week 9 as you host the New England Patriots.
Can't lose to the Patriots. We have to beat them this year. Otherwise, I might just give up. Yeah, no, I think we'll win. We'll win that game. I think that'll probably be the most comfortable one we have. It'll be a bit like the Atlanta game last year that we had when I think it was Levis's first start. He threw 4 touchdowns. It'll be a similar game to that where we just go and tear them apart.
Yeah, in that sort of throwback jersey that he's wearing, it was pretty cool performance, I must admit.
Yeah, it's a beauty of a jersey as well.
It is as well. It's probably the best. That or the Kelly Green, all Dolphins for me are the best throwback jerseys. Are you wearing it this year again? Do you know what game you're wearing it for? Have they announced that?
I think it will be one of them will be the Texans at home because they can't help themselves. And the other, I don't know if it's been confirmed yet. I'm not really sure, but I imagine it will probably be. I imagine it might be at home, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I know for sure one of them will be the Texans.
Okay, it's interesting. Bit of shithousery, I think they call it. With that.
We're not getting into this debate now. As someone from the UK, I can understand the mindset of this is just not right. It's a bit wrong because obviously with sports over here, it's a completely different story. But yeah, I've got strong opinions of Texans fans who want to claim the Oilers history because it's just not the way it works over there, and they should know better.
We'll have to get you on again. We'll talk about that in more detail.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So yeah, your other game you're going to traveling. You're traveling yourself from Tennessee to the LA to take on the Chargers.
Yeah, I think the Chargers are going to have a real struggle this year. I don't think the team's like on paper that bad. I just don't. I just can see them having one of those years where they end up at this point in the season deciding just to kind of tank. We'll have to wait and see how it pans out with Herbert as well, with the injuries that he continually seems to get. So yeah, I think we'll win that one, which is rare. I don't think I ever say we're going to win on the road, but I do think we'll win that.
Right. Okay. So week 11, you're back at home against the Minnesota Vikings.
3 wins in a row, which again sounds weird to say as a Titans fan, but I think we should win that one. I'm not convinced on McCarthy, whether he's even starting or not. I think the Vikings have got a good team, but I think we'll win that one at home.
It's amazing, actually, looking at your schedule from week 4 to week 14. You've only got 4 home games. You got week 4, 7, 8, 10, 12, and 13 all on the road. So they've given you quite a tough middle of the season stretch for you.
I think the schedule as a whole is quite tough this year. I mean, if you look at, there's not many absolute, okay, that's an easy win. I mean, they're never easy as Titan fans, but I think there's not many that I'm expecting to play that are going to be bottom 3 of the league or any by any stretch. I think maybe by the Patriots, but you never know with the Patriots. They could easily go and find themselves to be half respectable. So I think it's just a tough schedule generally. But yeah, the road games, that run that we've got, yeah, it's quite tough.
Yeah, I'd agree. And you mentioned it before, on the road to the Texans in week 12.
Yeah, I think we'll lose this one on the road. I think at this point the Texans are going to be right in the midst of trying to win the division. I think we'll lose that game.
And then week 13, you go to Washington to take on the Commanders.
I think we'll win it, but only just. I think Daniels is a really, really good quarterback. I think he'll have some growing pains there. I think their team is nowhere near ready to really compete. So I think we'll win that one.
And then week 14 is a AFC South matchup as you host the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, we'll beat the Jags at home. I think that's going to be one game where I actually would go as far as saying that might even knock them out of contention of winning the division at that point.
Well, actually, I've seen their schedule and it's pretty horrific. So yeah, I wouldn't even be shocked if their head coach is different to the start of the year. But that's another episode, another tale. Week 15, you are at home for your penultimate home game of the season against the, of course, the Callahan Bowl. You take on the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I think I put us down to lose this one. I do think it'll be a really close game. It'll probably be like a field goal wins it at the end, but I think we'll just come out the wrong side of it. The Bengals are a bit of a bogey team of ours over the last sort of several years or so, certainly since Burrow's come in. But yeah, narrow loss. We'll put that one down.
Well, week 16, you mentioned before you were going to split the series with the Colts. Are you sticking with that? A loss in week 16?
Yeah, we'll lose on the road. I think we'll lose that game.
So, week 17 is a road game against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So I've put us to lose that game. I never like going away to Jacksonville, especially after last year when I was actually at that game. But I think we'll split the series with them as well.
And then finally, week 18 is a home game against the Houston Texans.
I think the Texans would have wrapped up the division by then, and we'll be resting certainly Stroud and potentially others. And I think we'll win that game.
Well, okay, so that means you're predicting a 8-9 season for your Titans. I think that's a good step up from your 6-11 last season.
Yeah, I think, and there's a few games there that I genuinely think could go either way. There's a few wins I've put in that could go the other way, but also 3 or 4 of the losses that could easily go the other way. So definitely not saying we're going to be 10-7, but if you flip a few of them around, it could go 6-11 or 7-10. You really don't know. But I think it's going to be an interesting year this year. I think I do think the Titans are going to be fun to watch for the first time in a long time. I really like the business. Our draft class. There's some really fun players there. Certainly some of the later round picks that I think could come out and prove themselves to be incredibly valuable. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
Amazing stuff. And that's where we will end the podcast for today, our Titans season preview. So first of all, once again, thank you to Greg for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Andy. Appreciate it.
And we will put on the socials Greg's handle. But if you want to give yourself now a chance to promote your social media, if you want anyone to give you a follow, where can they find you on socials?
Yeah, so I'm at Greg_Kett, but you can I'm also part of the Transatlantic Titans. So it's the UK fan group for the Titans, which is at Transatlantic TN. We do weekly podcasts and generally don't take ourselves too seriously. So come and join us, have a follow, have a bit of a laugh. It's always fun to watch when our punt returners drop balls. It's always fun to see the meltdown that we do on Twitter.
Well, yeah, we are. Do give that a follow as well if you are interested in some Titans content. If you are a Titans fan watching or listening to this podcast, and of course we are back after our week away. This is our 4th episode since coming back. We've had the Cardinals, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, and now the Titans. So yeah, we are once again slowly going through all the teams. We are about the halfway point now of the 32 teams. So do join us along the ride. Either if your team has already been done or your team is to come up in the future, do keep an eye out on the podcast for all of those updates. We should be giving you now one a day until the season starts, before we ultimately do our season preview episode with Luke and Steve, where we give our predictions for each division and each award before our Super Bowl winner. But this has been the Tennessee Titans 2024 season preview. I have been, as ever, your host, Andy Davies. This has been our Titans fan guest, Greg Kett. And we will see you guys on next season preview. See you then.